Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Let's Start Story on What If Naruto and Sakura Went on a Secret Summer Vacation. Part 2. So do 2 blue hearts comment. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video, and please share with your friends and watch till end. Also check out Patreon, for I have upload Naruto X Ino uncensored spicy version, link in description. Sasuke. Below you. Sasuke didn't even look down. He shot straight into the air as wicked stone spikes erupted from the ground beneath him. Sakura watched as the enemy Jonin moved his hands, directing the spikes to follow Sasuke's trajectory. He wasn't about to give the Uchiha a good place to land. Like hell, Sakura growled. She was already in a bad mood. This guy was messing with the wrong Kunoichi's teammate. And he wasn't even paying attention to her. Well, he would be in a moment. Sakura sprinted forward from her position near the edge of the clearing the fight was centered in. Ignoring the sounds of other combatants around her, she pushed her speed faster and faster, gathering chakra into her fist all the while. At the last moment she rammed her fist into the ground at a shallow angle. The effect was that, rather than opening fissures in the ground, vibrations gained power as they traveled in waves. The Jonin, his attention still on Sasuke, barely had time to look up at her before he was sucked into the now liquefied earth beneath him. But this would not hold an Iwa nin of his level for long. Compliments of going through an earthquake a couple weeks ago. Now, Sasuke. Still in the air, Sasuke loosed the hottest Kaden jutsu he could muster right at the spot the enemy had disappeared. The ground hardened to a thick, ceramic, superheated, shell. A few moments later the spikes dissolved back into the ground as the jutsu's wielder died from heat and asphyxiation. Sasuke landed lightly nearby. Sakura wiped the sweat from her brow and looked around. This was one section of forest that would never be the same again. The day had started out so quietly, too. Early in the morning, word had come by Hawk that a village near Konoha had spotted a group of Pei Opal traveling through their territory in a less than open manner. Naruto's squad had been dispatched to intercept what was assumed to be a small group of bandits. Several hours later one of Naruto's tiny toads had popped in on Tsunade's desk with a call for reinforcements. Come to find out that the bandits were in fact 3 full squads of Iwa shinobi, deep in fire country for some reason or another. 3 squads. 9 chunin. With 3 Jonin commanders. Sakura and Sasuke had been sent out, with instructions to take anyone useful they found on the way to the gates. They had grabbed Choji on their way out of the tower. He had been running some errand or another for his father, but had dropped everything when he heard what was going on. Unfortunately, the rest of Team Nara had the day off and were nowhere to be found. The 3 of them had passed Hinata's team coming in the gate as they were on their way out. When they had shouted a hasty explanation, Hinata had promptly turned her team right around and caught up in a few seconds. We had an escort mission, and nothing exciting happened, so we're still raring to go. Hinata looked back at Tenten and the 2 young chunin on her team. Right guys. A chorus of, "Hi," answered her. Besides, I just got Kiba trained the way I like him. I need to protect my time investment. Her tone was light, but worry crossed her face briefly. The reinforcements, now 7 strong, had raced to Naruto's last coordinates to find his team engaged with the enemy, but with Naruto himself nowhere to be seen. They had quickly spread out to back up their embattled comrades. Kiba and Konohamaru had been somehow holding their own, and Maki was down with a badly broken leg but was far from out. The dark-haired Kunoichi with a predilection for black clothes and large projectiles had perched herself in a tree and was peppering any enemy that held still long enough with summoned shuriken and kunai. She was the one who had seen her captain load up by an earth jutsu several minutes into the fight, the ground closing up behind him. They hadn't seen him since. Hinata directed her chunin to protect Maki while she and Tenten engaged one of the Jonin. Kiba and Choji kept another one busy while Konohamaru took a breather, and Sakura and Sasuke had just taken out the other. Several of the lower-level chunin, who Sakura suspected had just been brought along for jutsu bait, had surrendered as soon as they had arrived. This fight was in the bag, but it wasn't over yet. Sakura tried to keep her mind on the fight and off of the whereabouts of her fiancé. Was this how it was going to be the rest of their lives, one wondering whether the other would return home after a mission? Now she knew why few ninja made permanent attachments. Or if they did, rarely made them official. But for some reason, Sakura knew it would work out for her and Naruto. She knew how strong they both were. Neither of them would fall easily. But she couldn't help getting more and more anxious the longer he stayed missing. Despite herself, her thoughts wandered to the normal breakfast they had shared just this morning. He had been excited about something that she couldn't quite remember now. What had it been? Oh yeah, he had been going on about some jutsu he had just perfected. Something about his father. His father. Jutsu. It clicked. Kiba, can it wait, Sakura? I'm a little busy. Kiba hollered back. The Jonin he and Choji were fighting, a big man with a badly scarred face, had just broken away from the Akamichi and Akamaru and was charging. Starting a complex and troublesome-looking set of hand signs. Didn't Naruto give you something this morning? What are you talking about? Think. I don't wait. Oh yeah. Kiba pulled an ordinary-looking kunai out of his pouch. Ordinary until you looked at it closely and saw the seals carved into the metal of the blade. Kiba sighted on the charging Iwa ninja and threw it. The Nin ground to a halt and just swayed his upper body to the side. The kunai buried itself in the ground behind him. Didn't they teach you little leaves to throw in school? Yep, Kiba said, smirking. As a yellow flash erupted from the kunai. Sure did. The Jonin began to charge again but was distracted when a hand came out of nowhere and gripped his shoulder. He looked behind him into a pair of furious blue eyes. That's impossible. Then everything went dark. Sakura watched as Naruto quickly snapped the man's neck and let him drop. He was bruised, disheveled, dirty, and pissed, but otherwise looked fine. He leveled a glare at the last Iwa Jonin, who had paused in his battle with the two kunoichi just in time to see him appear. The man blanched white as the wind began to swirl around him, kicking up dust. And quickly took off into the trees, abandoning the Chunin under his command to their fate. Naruto shook his head, causing bits of dirt and gravel to dislodge from his hair as the last couple Chunin putting up a fight dropped their weapons hastily. He stalked over to where Maki and Konohamaru were sitting. You guys all right? Maki looked up at her captain and grinned. Nothing to worry about. Sakura-san could have this leg fixed in a second. I'm going to go home and sleep for a week, grumbled Konohamaru. You guys earned it, good job, both of you. Naruto reached out and tousled their hair, and, calm now that he saw that his kids were only a little banged up, walked over to Sakura and wrapped his arms around her. He rested his cheek against the top of her head and sighed gustily. Well, that was fun. I'm all for the sleep for a week thing. She smiled into his chest. No kidding. Where were you? Fighting my way out of a tunnel filled with traps and finding myself who knows where. Damn, I hate earth jutsu. By the time I found a place near enough to the surface that I could blast my way out without bringing the whole thing down on top of me, I was miles from here. I was on my way when I felt the seals go off. Which reminds me. Naruto straightened up. Kiba, could I talk to you for a moment? Warned by something in his friend and captain's voice, Kiba kept his distance. Putting Hinata between them. What? Seriously Kiba, come here for a sec. That's okay, buddy, I know that tone. Geez, paranoid much. I'm not going to do anything. Kiba edged closer. Then Hinata finished checking him out for injuries, shoved him forward. Kiba studied his friend, and was somewhat reassured. Naruto's voice was calm, and he had an arm around Sakura, but he still had this slight look of impending mayhem on his face. He was right. Naruto's long arm shot out and wrapped around Kiba's neck before he could even run. Soon he was in a headlock and Naruto was dragging his knuckles back and forth across his scalp, while his traitorous dog and his even more traitorous girlfriend stood by and just watched. Kiba, what was the point of me spending the past year working on the Hiraishin? Learning the seals from what little scraps of notes I could find, preparing the kunai until my hands are bloody, if it takes you an hour to remember to throw the damn knife. Come on man, I'm sorry. I mean, you just gave me that thing this morning. How was I supposed to remember that? At least we know it works now, right? And quit with the noogieing already. Naruto grinned and let him go. Kiba went to stand next to Hinata, grumbling under his breath about abusive captains. Hinata held his hand, trying not to laugh. The Iwa Chunin, huddled together nearby under Tenten's watchful gaze, were looking at this exchange with something akin to awe, with no little confusion mixed in. Naruto regarded them, not unkindly. Do any of you have serious injuries? We'll be moving out soon. Naruto cocked his head, perplexed, when they all looked at him in horror and shook their heads rapidly. He looked at Sakura. What's with them? Sakura laughed and Sasuke snorted and rolled his eyes. Naruto. They just saw one of their bedtime stories come to life. They've probably been raised on legends of Konoha's Yellow Flash. Congratulations, you've just become your father. Naruto looked sour. Great, I've just become a second-generation Iwa boogeyman. He walked back over to Maki. Let's get out of here and go home. Hey Akamaru, how's about giving Maki a lift home? Your master can walk for once. The giant dog woofed in agreement and paced over to the Chunin. He lay down next to her and rolled over so she could throw her good leg over him and grip his fur. He slowly rolled back over on his chest and stood up, bringing Maki with him. He was so gentle in this maneuver that the kunoichi didn't even grimace in pain. The dog started down the faint game trail they had. Followed to get here with Konohamaru walked beside them in case he had to steady his teammate. Tenten and the two Chunin rounded up their captives and herded them down the trail as Sasuke and Choji too. Okay to the trees on either side to watch for further trouble. Kiba and Hinata followed behind Tenten, talking quietly. That left Naruto and Sakura bringing up the rear as they started for home. They walked quietly for a while, hand in hand. Before Naruto brought up a rather sore subject that had been an ongoing argument between them for the past few days or so. So, have you told her yet? Sakura grimaced. He just wouldn't let this go. No. He gave her a look. Sakura. I know. You just have no idea how bad she's going to take it. Sakura, it's your mother. What is the worst she could possibly do to you? Naruto. She was giving me a hard time about us being friends. What do you think she's going to say when I tell her this? I think she would have issues no matter who you married, personally. I'm not so sure about that. You know, you're 20, I'm almost 21. Why are you making such a big deal about getting one person's approval? Naruto walked with his head down. So she couldn't see his eyes beneath his fringe. One of us should have family there, he answered lowly. Oh, so that's what all this was about. She should have seen it, knowing how strongly he felt about family. He had been even more sensitive about it since he had been reading his father's scattered notes on the Hiraishin. She started to apologize when both of them had to screech to a halt. Hinata was standing in the middle of the trail, hands on her hips and a very exasperated look on her face. The diminutive kunoichi stalked up to Naruto and shook a slightly glowing fingertip in his face. Close enough that he had to cross his eyes to keep it in focus. That's it, I've heard enough. Naruto, don't you dare think that you won't have any family at your wedding. Tell me, what are all of us, exactly? Just your neighbors. How about Iruka, Shizune, Kakashi? How about I tell the Hokage what you just said? Naruto shook his head frantically at that, still trying to keep her fingertip in sight. What had he been thinking giving this woman more confidence? Right now he almost missed the Hinata who could hardly talk to him. Not the one who flicked you with slightly charged jukin fingers. ND in a standard Jonin's uniform instead of her old lavender clothes, she just looked plain dangerous. Luckily for him, she rounded on Sakura next. And you, Sakura, tell your mother before we tell her for you. Are you too ashamed of Naruto to tell her you're marrying him? Is that it? Sakura stared at her friend, aghast. Of course not. That's not it at all. It's just that. I'm scared, alright. I'm terrified beyond belief to tell her. Quote. Naruto snorted several times, like he did when he was holding in a laugh. Sakura glared at him. He wrapped his arms around her and chuckled. Sakura, I don't care. Now where you got the idea that you were the only one that was scared? I've been scared since you said yes. I'm terrified at the whole idea. Marrying you always seemed like an unattainable dream to me. Now that I'm actually doing it, it's freaking me out. Beside, you'll have it easy with your mother. You should have seen me telling Ba-chan. He shuddered dramatically. Sakura started to laugh. Look at the two of us. Some Jonin we are. How about we just agree to be freaked out together from now on? Naruto kissed her on the forehead. Deal. Hinata sighed and looked at her boyfriend. Isn't that cute, Kiba? Whatever. I think it's too much trouble. He should just do what all the Inuzuka men have always done and just carry her off and. Hey, Get that finger away from me. Sakura was facing an opponent that scared her in a way she hadn't experienced since she had made Chunin. An opponent who knew her weaknesses like no other. Her mother. Naruto was lucky she loved him as much as she did, or she would have never agreed to this. Sakura had thought she had this planned out pretty well. She went at a time of the day that she knew Haruno Hanako was usually relaxed. She had a bag of her mother's favorite dango. She had prepared a strong and foolproof speech. Then her mother, who could still read her like a book, had steered her to sit next to her on the couch and asked why she was being buttered up. All of Sakura's carefully laid plans had gone out the window at that point and she had decided to just get it over with. Mom, I'm engaged. There, she had said it. Hanako raised an elegant eyebrow. Engaged? To whom may I ask are you engaged to? The only boy you have talked about lately is. A look of dawning comprehension settled on her face. No, absolutely not. There is no way you could marry that. Sakura cut her off with a scowl. This was going downhill after only the first exchange. Mother, if you want to be a part of this at all, you'll watch how you finish that sentence. I want you to be there in all, but I won't let you, or anyone else, put Naruto down. He's the one who wanted me to tell you, even though I knew you'd react this way. But, the demon, lives in him but does not control him. He hasn't had to use its power in years, he's powerful enough on his own. Don't count something against him that isn't his fault. He's suffered enough because of it. Hanako seemed to sense the seriousness in her daughter's voice, and tried to change tactics. But sweetie, she said cajolingly, you could do so much better. Sakura rolled her eyes. She had wondered when she would try that. She was sure that her mother still secretly hoped that she would have an Uchiha as a son-in-law. Somehow she suspected that that was the real reason behind her mother's objections, and not to Naruto personally. Better than the Yondaime's son, that is. Sakura asked dryly. Naruto would forgive her for using that information as leverage. Hanako spluttered. That's just a rumor. Mother, please. If they looked any more alike, they would be twins. Just yesterday he scared the bejesus out of a handful of Iwagakure shinobi. It isn't a secret anymore, even though he doesn't like to make a big deal about it. Quote. Her mother was silent for a while and Sakura let her digest that info for a while. She was about to say something when she caught movement outside the window out of the corner of her eye. Movement that had looked suspiciously like blonde hair disappearing over the edge of the roof. She was going to kill him. Mother, Sakura said sweetly, could you excuse me for just a second? She got up and went outside on the small patio off the living room. It was hard to move with all of her mother's potted plants, but she squeezed through and looked up. All right, I know you're up there. A second later, Naruto popped his head over the edge of the roof. He grinned at her sheepishly. Naruto, what are you doing here? I thought you were going to let me handle this. I'm here to plead my case. You should let me come in and work my charm on her. He gave her his most winning smile. Sakura sighed. It actually was tempting. He was right, he could be very charming and persuasive when he wanted to be. She had heard Tsunade-sensei say more than once that Naruto could sell sand to Suna. But her mother was kind of riled right now, and Sakura wasn't sure she'll be faced with the object of her dislike at the moment. I'm not sure that's a good idea. If you couldn't tell, this isn't going so well. That's what I tried to tell him. Another head popped over the gutter. Sasuke, not you too. Who better to help me plead my case? Sakura put her head in her hands. She was going to have a major headache after this was over. Then she heard a slight commotion nearby. She made a low growling noise in her throat. Okay, I know why you two are here. Now what about them? She pointed to a roof across the street, where an impromptu gathering seemed to be taking place. Kiba and Kankuro, who was in town on business for the case cage, were having a not-so-whispered conversation on the merits of various kunoichi. Shikamaru and Choji were sitting next to them, pretending not to listen. But nodding every so often. Kakashi and Genma were sitting above them on the crest of the roof, and one seemed to be passing some money to the other. Naruto looked amused, and Sasuke smirked. I think they're expecting some entertainment. Suddenly Kiba's voice rang out. Hey Naruto, are you sure she's worth all this? You should just do what my father did and carry her off to some inn and just. He was cut off as Shikamaru hastily clapped a hand over his mouth. Kiba, Shut up man, crap, too late. He released him and they all scattered as a flowerpot sailed AC. Ross the road and smashed into the shingles where they had been sitting. It had been a large pot, and even the two elite Jonin were forced to duck and cover as shards of pottery flew everywhere. Kanku. Aro looked at the enraged Kunoichi as he brushed terracotta off his clothes. Hey guys, I think we need to find a roof a bit further away. Sakura. What's going on out there? Her mother's voice called from inside. Great. Sakura thought, now I have to buy her a new plant. She looked up at her fiancé and his brother. Let me talk to her for a bit. I'll call you if I need you, okay? Naruto ached down and cupped her cheek in his hand for a moment before he and Sasuke slid up and out of view. Sakura braced herself and went back inside. Sorry mom, just some rabble out there I had to deal with. So where were we? Hanako just sat and studied her for a moment as she sat back down opposite her. The scrutiny was making her faintly uncomfortable. She wondered when she had gotten so threatened by her own mother. Maybe it was because her mother knew things about her that could possibly be used against her. Were all shinobi this paranoid? Something Shisho had said to her the other day came back to her. Parents know just which strings control our heart and soul. After all, they're the ones who tied them there. Sakura resolved to be a little more patient. Mother, just hear me out please. I have to fight for a living. I really don't like doing it on my days off. I know that you're just looking out for me, and I appreciate that, but you don't have to worry about this. Naruto is a good man. Sakura looked up and smiled. He's strong, he's smarter than most people give him credit for, but he's modest, and he makes me laugh. He's my best friend. I almost lost him last year, and He made me realize that I couldn't imagine ever being without him. Hanako seemed to realize at this point that Sakura was no longer talking to her, but was addressing a spot somewhere over her right shoulder. She turned around to see the object of their discussion perched on the railing of her patio. It was the closest she had been to Uzumaki Naruto for quite a while, and she barely saw the orange-clad gaki in this composed young man before her. His hair was long and shaggy, and he was wearing a haori that she recognized as something styled after what the yondaime used to wear. In fact, she could see that Sakura was right. The resemblance was startling. The whisker marks followed the contours of a leaner face, and didn't stand out as much. He had one leg bent up under him on the rail. But she could tell when he stood up that he would be very tall. But there was something else that made him stand out. It was his soul, sitting out there for all to see. For a demon, he seemed more human than some others in this village. Hanako thought wryly. Demon. She could never think that again. It was the eyes that did it. Hanako had lived in Konoha her whole life. While Sakura was the first ninja since her great-grandfather. One couldn't live here without being familiar with them. To her experience, most ninja acquired a hard, detached look after a while. But this young man's eyes brimmed with good humor, amusement, and right now, love. He and Sakura seemed to be locked in some kind of wordless exchange. She suddenly felt that she was intruding. Sakura jumped as her mother cleared her throat. She saw a look of resignation tinged with acceptance go across her face. Hanako looked out where Naruto was still on the patio. You might as well come in, young man. We have a lot to talk about. Naruto bowed nervously in the doorway, then came and sat gingerly next to Sakura. He was trying to keep a certain distance from her, so as not to threaten her mother. He looked terrified. Saku. Ross slid over until she was pressed up against him and took his hand. Ninja never did anything halfway. Naruto had been in many different kinds of situations. From terrifying to hilarious, painful to embarrassing. He had experienced it all in his 20 years of life. Currently, he was in, hands down, the most uncomfortable situation he had ever been in. He was sitting on a couch in a house he had never been in, next to his best friend, who he had finally worked up the courage to ask to marry him, and to his elation and fright had said yes. Now he was being very closely scrutinized by said love's mother. This was worse than the experience he had had earlier in the week. Flashback. Tsunade glanced up from her never-ending paperwork as her door opened and Naruto slowly edged in. That in itself told her something was up. Because he usually just sailed in, no matter what happened to be going on at the time. Ba-chan. Hey Gaki, what do you need? As you can see, I'm a little busy. Ha, busy. Right. Like you've signed more than one paper today. Tsunade looked at her kid hard. That retort had been pretty half-hearted. Not one of his best efforts. What's up with you? He swallowed nervously, and didn't say anything. Tsunade was starting to get genuinely worried. This wasn't like him at all. Naruto, what's wrong? He drew himself up. Ba chanim getting married thanks ya. And with that made a dash for the door. Freeze mister. Naruto stopped with his foot halfway out the door. He slowly turned around and came back in. Tsunade stood up and came around her desk, standing toe-to-toe with her, little brother, son. She still wasn't used to having to look up to meet his eyes. Would you care to run that by me again? Naruto fidgeted. Tsunade was loving this, making him squ. IRM was getting harder and harder the older he got. So naturally she took every opportunity that came her way. Well, on our trip I asked Sakura to marry me and she said yes, so we thought we would do it sometime next week if that's okay with you. This came out in almost as much of a jumble as his last statement. Tsunade just stared at him, then suddenly reached up and knocked his hat off his head. Since this was usually followed by one of her deadly forehead flicks, Naruto scrunched his eyes closed and braced himself. She grabbed the front of his jacket and yanked his head down, and kissed him on the forehead. A gesture that had come to have a special meaning to the two of them. Naruto's eyes flew open. Tsunade grabbed him in a hug and said, "It's about damn time, little brother." Nah. Naruto had thought that had been tough, and he knew he had to get back at Tsunade somehow for giving him a hard time, but he now knew where Sakura had gotten her. I could be a better interrogator than Ibiki, cuz all I have to do is glare at them, till they crack, look. He'd almost rather fight Akatsuki all over again than face that look. Especially from someone whom he was convinced really didn't like him. Finally, after a long interval of her studying him and him sitting trying to look harmless, Haruno Hanako sighed and got up. If we're going to continue this discussion, I'd better make some tea. With that she moved into the kitchen. Naruto shot Sakura a puzzled and slightly panicked look. Discussion? What discussion? Sakura was sitting there with a very smug, "I told you so," expression on her face. Naruto groaned mentally. He was the one who had insisted on her including her mother in their wedding in the first place. Now he was the one on the spot. Payback was a bitch. All right. You told me it would be like this and I didn't believe you. But at least she let me in the house. True. But you still could have let me get her more used to the idea before you made an appearance. Why did you ditch Sasuke and the others, by the way? My loyal brother and moral support fell asleep on me up there. Naruto pointed up and out the patio door, where the edges of a pair of blue zori could barely be seen hanging over the edge of the roof. And due to flying pottery, the rest of the gang felt it was too dangerous around here and left. You know, if you had hit Kankuro, you could have started an international incident. You should have just aimed for Kiba, he said, teasingly. Sakura grinned evilly. Naruto made a mental note to tell Kiba to keep his mouth shut around her for a while. So I got bored. I think I should have stayed bored. Sakura then looked thoughtful as she craned her neck to look out the doorway. I can't believe Sasuke is comfortable enough to fall asleep in the open like that. Why does he sleep so much now? He wasn't like that before. Naruto chuckled. He'd asked his brother the same question. From the moment he left to the day he finally took care of Orochimaru. He had to sleep with one eye open at all times. Now he's in a place he feels safe, and he can catch up on sleep and let his guard down a little. Besides, it's not like anyone can sneak up on him. Though it would be kind of fun to try. Sakura grinned. I don't think my mother would like to have to replace her roof, though. No kidding. I'm supposed to be making a good impression, remember? As if. Naruto was hitting a laughing Sakura with a cushion as Hanako came back into the room carrying a loaded tray. He dropped everything and jumped up to give her a hand, which earned him a measuring look. Though with a bit more warmth than before. She sat down again and served them tea, then seemed to collect her thoughts. Uzumaki-san, it would seem as though I have been harboring certain misconceptions about you. My daughter has seen fit to educate me. Now I would like you to do so. I would like to know more about you. Naruto unconsciously rubbed the back of his head. A nervous tic that he had apparently inherited from his father. For one thing, Haruno-san, please call me Naruto. As Sakura can tell you, I'm not a very formal person. I'm also not very good at talking about myself. Please ask me whatever you want to know. He was starting to see where Sakura got her intelligence, and he was wondering how much this cross-examination was going to hurt. Why do you not go by the Namikaze name? Naruto widened his eyes in surprise. He hadn't been expecting that one. He looked at Sakura, who was looking sheepishly into her cup of tea, but he couldn't be upset with her for telling her mother his heritage. It's not like it was a secret or anything. He thought about it for a moment. In memory of my mother, I suppose. My father is so well known, and people only have to look at that mountain or my face to remember him. I want people to know there was a Uzumaki Kushina. Besides, I've spent most of my life dragging her name through the mud. I can't imagine she would be pleased with me if I abandoned it now. It's not because of what the Yondaime did. Are you mad at your father for the burden he placed on you? Naruto chuckled. I was, for about 10 minutes. He felt Sakura wince. He didn't blame her. He had destroyed a good portion of the training ground in those 10 minutes. Hanako raised her eyebrow. So forgiving. Not forgiving, just practical. Looking back, I can see that he had very little choice. He saved as many people as he could, in the shortest time possible. Naruto smiled. I understand about choices like that now. He felt Sakura squeeze his hand. So you have no family? Sakura glared at her mother for the bluntness of the question, but Naruto laughed. As I was forcefully reminded yesterday, I have plenty of family. I have a father, a brother, a grandmother, a few sisters and lots of friends. A father, brother. Yumi no Iruka has been like a father to me since I was 9. Even more so since my godfather died. And I have a brother, or blood brother. Uchiha Sasuke, who is currently asleep on your roof. Hanako involuntarily looked up, as if Sasuke was about to suddenly come crashing through the ceiling. If I remember from one of Sakura's rants from that time period, didn't he almost kill you? He wasn't being himself. I forgave him of that a long time ago. He beats himself up about it enough. Hanako recovered. And is your grandmother on your father or mother's side? Hanako looked puzzled as both Naruto and Sakura started to laugh hysterically. Naruto recovered first. The way most of the clans in this village are interrelated somehow. I wouldn't be surprised if Tsunade Ba-chan wasn't a distant relation of mine, but you would never get her to admit it. Hanako was shocked at first when she realized he was talking about the Hokage. At his familiarity with such a person, but there was no boasting in his voice, only affection. It was then she realized that he was related to none of his family, by blood. He saw all his friends as sort of an extended family. How extraordinary. Her maternal side was starting to respond to the young man. How lonely a childhood he must have had. How many people in his position would have become jaded and bitter with life. He could have grown up to be the embodiment of the demon the village feared so. Instead, he risked his life on a regular basis to protect it. And how many times had he protected her daughter? She saw another look pass between Naruto and Sakura. Hanako reached a decision quickly then. She stood up suddenly, causing Naruto to stand as well to be polite. She walked around the table between them and without hesitation wrapped him in a hug. She felt him stiffen at first, but quickly relax and tentatively return the hug. I would be honored to count you as family, Naruto-san. I know you will look after my daughter. For the rest of my life, he replied seriously. Sakura could only stand and watch, tears of happiness sliding down her cheeks. The two people she loved the most in the world were finally in sync. Why? Kiba asked, a few nights later. Why what? Shikamaru responded absently, as he and Neji scrutinized their shogi board. They and most of the rest of the guys were sitting at and around the large dining room table in the main house. Kankuro was staying with them while he was in town. He much preferred that to staying in the guest quarters, as he had more fun here. At the moment had something or another spread out on the living room floor, tinkering with it. As much as he liked the puppet master, Shikamaru was still a little sour that Kankuro was the go-fair for the cage this time, as Tamari had just acquired a genin team and wouldn't be leaving Suna for a while. Choji and Lee had their backs to the table, watching the TV in the other room. Shino had ditched his enormous coat in the familiar company and was writing in a small book. Kiba was sitting with his chin in his hand and a disgruntled expression on his face. The four kunoichi had already adjourned to Tenten and Hinata's house for more feminine conversation. Though all of their individual residences on the Uchiha compound had their own kitchens. Eating together in the main house had been a tradition they had established fairly early on. They took turns cooking, with mixed results. Some of them were pretty good cooks, some of them couldn't boil water. The best cooks by far were Choji and Naruto, so they were often pressed into service. Why are we sitting here on our butts when we need to be celebrating Naruto's last week with us? Naruto looked up from his place at the end of the table where he was busy drawing explosive tags for everybody. The fact that he was good with seals meant that the rest of the group didn't have to pay ridiculously high prices for their tags. It was so nice that they didn't even mind ink on the table. Am I going somewhere I don't know about? Come on, buddy. You're getting married in a week. You won't be your own man anymore. You should be enjoying yourself while you can, Kiba said plaintively. Shikamaru grinned when Naruto snorted in amusement and picked up his brush again. In case you forgot, I'm marrying Sakura. I seriously doubt she's going to keep me chained up and never let me have any fun. You never know, man, she might turn all possessive on you later. You could end up totally whipped. I wouldn't say that with her around. Unless you want another pot chucked at your head, Sasuke commented from his seat next to Naruto, glancing up from the scroll he was reading. That got I hear that, from Kankuro in the other room. Kiba just plowed on. We should be out getting trashed, at the very least. Some of us don't get trashed, Shikamaru noted as he captured one of Neji's pieces. Causing his opponent to frown and lean closer to the board. Lee won't drink, Neji doesn't drink, and Naruto can't get drunk. Which was true. Lee didn't drink, or more to the truth, they wouldn't let him drink, for obvious reasons. Every time they did, they ended up having to pay damages to someone. Neji hadn't touched a drop of alcohol since an incident the night he became a Jonin, when some of the older Jonin had taken him out in celebration, namely Guy, Kakashi, and Genma. The rest of them weren't exactly sure what had happened, because Neji and the ones that were there weren't talking. Hikamaru had discovered a little-known fact about Naruto on the first anniversary of Jiraiya's death. Naruto had been holed up in his apartment for a full day before he and Sasuke had gotten worried and gone to check on him. They had found him sitting slumped over at his kitchen table, surrounded by empty beer and sake bottles. Sure that his friend was wasted out of his mind, Shikamaru had walked quietly across the room to make some strong tea when, to his surprise, Naruto had raised his head and looked at him. He had been cold sober. So much for my wallowing in a drunken stupor. Naruto had said, chuckling ruefully. What's the point of drinking this stuff if you don't get any of the benefits? How's about we grab some food, I'm starving. Come to find out, the Kyuubi's chakra cleansed Hi's system so well that he never even got tipsy when drinking, which kind of defeated the purpose. Now he only drank when he was being social. Doesn't mean the rest of us have to suffer, Kiba grumbled. Then he perked up. I know. How about one last prank? The prank to end all pranks. Wadea say Naruto. Shikamaru looked over at Naruto and saw, with a sinking feeling, that he had put his brush down again and actually looked intrigued. Okay dog boy, I'm listening. What did you have in mind? I don't know, you're the mastermind when it comes to stuff like that. You plan it out, and we'll help. Shikamaru didn't at all like where this was going. Knowing these two, the rest of them were going to get dragged into this, whether they liked it or not. Naruto looked thoughtful. There is someone I need to do a payback on. All right. Give me a few days and I'll work on it. Shikamaru could hardly wait. To take his mind off it, he went back to slaughtering Neji at shogi. When he didn't hear about a prank for a few days, Shikamaru was hopeful that the idea had been dropped. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. 3 nights later Kiba and Naruto walked into the dining room with their heads together, talking in low conspiratorial tones. Dare I ask? Shikamaru drawled. Kiba looked up. You are not going to believe what this guy came up with. This is going to be great. Better than getting trashed. Shikamaru didn't like the sound of that. Kiba drank like a fish. But he couldn't quite help being kind of curious about what Naruto had come up with. With him, you usually always learned something new. Acting supremely uninterested, he asked, so, you doing this tonight? Yeah, late. I got the schedule of the ambush shift rotation. Naruto grinned when Shikamaru's eyebrows shot up to his hairline. I've got my ways. It's not like anyone from outside would have gotten it. How many of us do you need? Shikamaru cursed his curiosity. He was wondering just what kind of prank needed the ambush shift schedule. Just a few. Some help to roll something heavy, then run interference if I need it. Be ready at about 2. Oh, and wear your scouting gear. Naruto grinned at him again, and Shikamaru didn't need to be a genius to know exactly what his blonde friend was thinking. Hook, line, and sinker. To Shikamaru's surprise, there were 8 black-clad figures who gathered outside the main house at 2 in the morning. He had been sure that at least Neji and Shino would have resisted being sucked into this crazy scheme, but there they were. They were all hooded and masked, so the only way to telephone each other apart were the eyes and body type, and sure enough, when he looked around, a pair of white eyes looked back. Shino was a little harder to pick out since they normally never saw him without his sunglasses on. Like him, their curiosity must have gotten the better of them. They all looked expectantly at the tall, blue-eyed shape, who had a large rolled-up piece of canvas tied to his back. So, you going to tell us who we're going after now? Asked Sasuke's voice to Shikamaru's left. Naruto turned and gazed in the direction of the center of the village. Shikamaru looked and just saw top of the Hokage's tower poking over the roof. His stomach flipped. You have got to be kidding. We're pranking the Hokage. Do you have a death wish? She'll hunt us down one by one and kill us. It's all good. She'll only be after me. Come on. They followed Naruto across the roofs for several minutes until he seemed to find something he was looking for. Here it is. It turned out to be a Uge ox cart filled about 2/4 of the way with varying types of refuse, all in different stages of decay. What are we doing with this? I just thought that Tsunade Ba-chan's office could use some sprucing up, that's all. This is your prank to end all pranks. Throwing garbage around the Hokage's office. You could have done this when you were 5, said a doubtful Choji. 4 actually, but let me put it this way. We're not just moving the garbage. Shikamaru was the first one to get it. You want to tell me how 8 of us are going to get a gigantic ox cart into the tower? He couldn't wait for the answer. That's what this is for. He pulled out the piece of canvas and unrolled it in front of the cart. Ta-da! They all gathered around to look. Painted in ink on the canvas was a large storage seal. The kind that shinobi used to carry more weapons and equipment in scrolls than what could be carried on the body. Shikamaru looked at Naruto incredulously. Have you lost your mind? You can't seal away something this big. He gestured at the cart. It probably took a team of 4 oxen to haul it. It's got to weigh at least 1,000 pounds. Why not? It's all just a matter of scale. The bigger the seal, the more storage. We roll the cart onto the canvas, and it works just as good as storing a kunai. Naruto sounded confident. Come on Shika, use your imagination. Yeah guys. If my captain says he can do something, he will. They all stared at Kiba. He had said that with all seriousness. It would seem that being on Naruto's team had made a believer out of the brash Inuzuka. They all looked at each other and shrugged. If he pulls this off, I'm never going to hear the end of it, Shikamaru mumbled to himself. That's why I gave up arguing a long time ago, Sasuke said, coming up behind him. With all 8 of them pushing, the cart rolled onto the fabric with little resistance. When it was positioned to Naruto's liking, he stood back and formed the familiar seal for storing. Shikamaru watched him closely. He seemed to be pouring a lot of chakra into it, but, theoretically with an object this big, it made sense. With a burst, Naruto released the chakra into the seal. And the cart vanished in a puff of smoke. Everyone except Sasuke and Kiba looked stunned. Shikamaru shook his head. He supposed he should have known better. Naruto was the one person who could stump him on a regular basis. He should have seen the signs when using the tags he made. They were exceptional. Most tags bought from one of the dealers in town had a few quirks, depending on who made them. Some took a little longer to detonate than they should, others would run the gambit of sizes of explosion. Some failed to ignite altogether. Naruto's, however, were always dependable. Add to the fact that he had modified the 4th Hiraishin with seals actually carved into the blade of the kunai, pieced together just from descriptions in scattered notes, and Shikamaru came up with one total. Naruto was becoming a seal master at an even younger age than the 4th had. Shikamaru was brought out of his mental wanderings by the sound of cloth being rolled up. Soon Naruto was tying the giant storage scroll, for that's what it now was, on his back. Let's go. My co-conspirator in the Anbu is going to go off shift soon. We need to be in and out before the shift change. The group took off for the tower without a sound. Lee and Kiba were making horrible strangling sounds as they tried to choke down their laughter. Sasuke's black eyes were shining with amusement over his mask. Choji was chuckling. And Neji and Shino hadn't gone home yet, so they were at least interested in how this turned out. Shikamaru wouldn't have left for the world. The air all around them was charged. How they knew why Naruto had done this for years. This was fun. Naruto couldn't help but get caught up in this moment. He hadn't done this in so long that he hadn't realized how much he missed it. Back then, his pranks had been cries for attention, but he had had a pretty good time getting that attention. And this wasn't even the best part. The best part would be in the morning when Ba-chan got to her office. Things might get a little crazy after that, but he would have fun with that too. He felt the positive energy around him. He was glad even the skeptics seemed to be having a good time now. He had always been alone growing up. It wasn't until he had been placed on Team 7 that he had discovered teamwork, and learned to relish it. Crave it even. And now here he was, working with his friends, not in battle, but on a prank. Life just didn't get better than this. They landed of the last roof closest the Hokage's tower. They paused for a moment and Naruto felt the air displacement. T meant someone had appeared out of the shadows and was now standing next to him. You do know that when you're pleading for your life in the morning, that my name never comes up, right? Yamato said conversationally. In and out in 30 seconds. We were never here, and neither were you. Good, because all she has to do is look at that roster and schedule one gave you, then my ass is in trouble. If she gets me first, I'm making sure you go down with me, Naruto. That's why I made some changes to the roster. You, Wolfie, were never on duty tonight. Yamato laughed. Never miss a beat, do you Naruto? Naruto looked up at the wolf-masked Anbu. Trust me Yamato Taicho, you're scary enough when you're not wearing that mask. Sasuke, Shikamaru, you guys come with me. The rest of you, keep your yes peeled and warn us if anything looks suspicious. See y'all later Yamato. Hopefully I'm not in a coma when you see me next. Naruto adjusted the scroll on his back. Let's go. With the Anbu on duty a party to the scheme. Getting into Tsunade's office was almost uneventful. Naruto unrolled the scroll and made sure it was centered in the middle of the room, where the card would make the most impact, and be the most in the way. He bit his thumb and smeared the blood across the seal. With a poof of smoke, the Hokage's office suddenly acquired a very large, very smelly, accessory. Hey Naruto, Shikamaru whispered. I have a question. Tsunade-sama's not too bad with seals herself. What's to stop her from sealing the cart back up within 30 seconds of her arriving? Naruto winked at him smugly. She is good with seals. That's why I keyed it to myself, my blood. If she wants the cart out of her office, she's going to have to find me first, and I plan on getting a head start before she comes after me. Shikamaru snorted. You know, I swear you're some kind of masochist or something. You just ask for it. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Tell me about it. The three of them rejoined the rest of the group. And they ran a few blocks before slowing down and removing their masks and hoods. Naruto, that was an acceptable diversion from routine, said Shino. Translation, he enjoyed himself, said Kiba. You're welcome, Shino. Naruto replied, feeling pretty good about this night. After all, from an Aburame, that was high praise indeed. They were approaching the gate to the compound, with Naruto in the lead. When he looked up and choked. Sakura was standing right in the middle of the gate with her arms crossed. From this distance, he couldn't tell what kind of mood she was in. What he LD tell was that she was wearing one of his tank tops over the pants she usually slept in, and it was really distracting him from trying to tell what kind of mood she was in. As he walked up to her, he saw with a sinking feeling that she appeared rather put out. Here it comes, he's going to get it now, he heard Kiba mutter to Lee. Sakura marched up to him and grabbed the front of his jacket. Yanking his head down, she kissed him. Then said, next time, you better take me with you. And with that she headed back toward the main house in his room. He really was the luckiest guy in the world. Another fun-filled morning on gate duty. Izumo, why do we always get stuck with this? I don't know. Maybe they think I like listening to you bitch all morning. Kamizuki Izumo replied absently, way too used to his friends complaining to give it more of a response. Higane Kitetsu rolled his eyes and let his forehead fall with a thunk onto the counter in front of him. There hasn't been anyone through this gate in the past 2 hours. There's never anyone this early in the morning. He looked at his best friend with what he hoped was a pitiful expression. Is it too much to ask for a little excitement? Just a little. Whenever you say that, something bad happens. I want excitement, and poof, a giant snake crashes through the wall. I want excitement, and poof, Uchiha Itachi strolls rough the gate and screws with our brains. You're jinxed. I am not. It doesn't happen every time. It happens enough. Ask anyone. I'm sure Shikamaru could give you the stats. Hey, what's up guys? What are we arguing about now? Kitetsu say he wants excitement again. The two elite Chunin looked up to see their friend and sometimes Junin commander, Shiranui Genma, looking at them curiously. I thought we told you not to do that. Every time you do something bad happens. Izumo looked triumphant. See, you're going to believe him over me. The argument continued for a few seconds more bef. Or all three of them became aware of a commotion going on in the center of the village, a commotion that seemed to be coming their way. Fast. Distant yelling was accompanied by small explosions and earth-shuddering impacts. The three shinobi jumped to the middle of the road, prepared to assist with whatever was happening. Izumo and Kitetsu raised their swords, and Genma put his hand to his pouch of kunai. As the noise came closer and grew louder, they were envisioning a squad of Anbu chasing a spy, a saboteur, an escaped S-class criminal. A cloud of dust rolled out around the corner at the end of the road. And they braced themselves. A second later a blur of yellow, black and orange dove out of the cloud and dashed toward them. Hey, asked Kitetsu, straightening up slightly and lowering his sword. Isn't that Uzumaki? The one and only, said Genma, starting to get an idea of what was going on. Naruto came barreling down the street, covered in dust and laughing manically. Gangway. Look out. Pissed off old lady chasing me. Might want to move guys. Old lady. Come back here you little bastard, you're really in trouble now. The Hokage came from out of nowhere and axe kicked at the fleeing blonde, leaving a dent in the road and throwing up more dust. Naruto leapt forward and rolled out of the way, bounced back on his feet and kept running. Get back here and get that damn cart out of my office. It's going to take weeks to get the smell out. Maybe it will give you incentive to get your work done faster, Bachin. I'm doing you and Shizune Nichin a favor. Naruto taunted over his shoulder. The three shinobi at the gate dove out of the way as the two tore past. Genma came up laughing as he watched his son's godfather run for his life. Run, man, run. She's gaining on you. They saw Naruto put on another burst of speed, trying to reach the safety of the forest, but Tsunade clipped him on the shoulder a moment later and he stumbled and fetched up with his back against a tree just outside the gate. He put a hand to his ear and turned on a communicator. Sasuke. Throw it. Tsunade was stalking toward him, radiating killing intent. Hurry. Throw it, throw it, throw it. Tsunade seemed to realize what he was saying at that point. Oh, don't you even think about it. See ya around, Bachin. Naruto smirked, threw Tsunade a jaunty salute, and with a yellow flash, vanished. Naruto. Now where did you go? Damn Hirishin. Now I have to find him and Uchiha. The three observers started sniggering, then laughing as she stood there muttering to herself, which died off to nervous chuckles as the Hokage drew back her fist and punched a hole right through the trunk of the tree her prey had been leaning on. They shut up as she walked back through the gate, still leaking a murderous chakra. She stopped and glared at them. What are you three doing just standing around? Get to work. Get these divots in the road filled in. Not just that one, but all of them in between here and the tower. Izumo and Kotatsu's faces fell, as Genma smirked. That goes for all three of you, Shiranui. With that she stomped back in the direction of her office. Kitetsu groaned. Why is it always us? He noticed Izumo and Genma looking at him strangely, and looked back at them. What? Then in a squirmy tone. What? Their expressions didn't waver. Okay fine, I won't say it anymore. Woo, that was close. Good timing. Buddy. Sasuke just shook his head as he took in Naruto's bruised, dust-covered appearance as he slid his back down the wall and sat next to him. I think Shikamaru's right, you do have a death wish. Quote, hey, she hasn't killed me yet, she likes me too much. Though I think I'm going to have Sakura look at my shoulder, she clipped me a good one. Naruto rotated his arm thoughtfully. Then leaned back against the wall they were hiding behind, one of the outer walls to the Uchiha compound, and relaxed in the warm sun. The two sat companionably for a while. Not saying anything and not really needing to. Their friendship had reached the stage of not needing many words long ago. But today Naruto wanted his brother's opinions on some things. So, what do you think about all this? Sasuke cracked an eye open. What do I think about what? You know, the whole me and Sakura getting married thing. I haven't heard much about it from you. Practically everyone else, but not you. Sasuke closed his eye. It's obvious you two are happy. Why would it matter what I think? You're my brother, one of the few family I have left. Of course what you think matters. Sasuke sighed, shifted around so that he was facing Naruto. Okay, what's the matter? Naruto was taken aback. What? There's got to be some reason you're asking me this. I think you're the one having the issues. Naruto stammered out a half-hearted denial, but Sasuke knew better. Just asking a question like the one he just asked was the Naruto equivalent of freaking out. Sasuke settled down to listen. Lady Tsunade sat in a tree not far from where her two young Junin were talking. It hadn't taken her long to find them, and had been about to pounce, when she noticed the seriousness of their conversation. So she just sat quietly and listened for a while. By the sounds of it, what Sakura had told her a couple of days ago was right. Naruto was still freaking out a bit. Unfortunately, he was talking to Sasuke, who was just about as clueless as Naruto when it came to this kind of thing, though Tsunade was glad Naruto had someone to bounce thoughts off of at least. She sighed. If this was a perfect world, Naruto would have had his father to talk to about marriage and such. Or his godfather, though she shuddered to think what kind of advice he would have gotten from Jiraiya. But even that would have better than listening to these two orphans trying to figure things out. In some ways, it was sort of pathetic. Tsunade shook herself back to reality. Her musings weren't getting the giant, stinking cart that evidently only one person could get rid of out of her office. She still couldn't believe the Gaki had actually drawn up that seal. A. Something that big should have been near on to impossible to put in a seal. No matter how big the damn scroll was. B. She should have been able to get rid of the bloody thing herself. It wasn't until she had tried several times, did she realize that only the seal's creator could make it work. Anyone with chakra should be able to trigger any storage scroll. Theoretically. The problem was, she just didn't want to admit that there was something else he was better at than her. Tsunade gathered herself and leapt, to land right in front of the two. She wanted both Naruto and his accomplice, and was prepared for them to scatter. Sasuke did bolt, and though she tried to grab him, she had forgotten that you never really saw Uchiha Sasuke move. With his speed he just appeared. Or, in this case, disappeared. She gave up on Uchiha and looked wildly around for her main target. Then realized that he hadn't even bothered moving from his spot. That alone should have tipped her off. What, aren't you going to run? Nah, too tired. Too tired, my ass. Just a lot on my mind. I guess. Tsunade softened a bit. You know, I may not have the most experience when it comes to some things, but you know you can talk to me whenever you need to, right? He smiled. Sure, Bachan. The smile faded as the Hokage leaned down, gripped the front of his vest and hauled him up to eye level. But only if you get your butt over to my office right now and get rid of that cart. She growled. She took her fist and bopped him on the head. A second later she was standing in a cloud of smoke and holding empty air. It had been a damn clone the whole time. She had forgotten the one major rule with Naruto. The one you finally caught was never the real one. Naruto. Sakura and the other kunoichi were sitting out on the porch of the house she and Ino shared. Actually, Ino had it to herself most of the time these days, as she spent most of her time in Naruto's room in the main house now. But this porch got the best sun, and that was where the four of them had parked themselves this morning, dressed in various sunbathing attire. Sakura still had a pretty good tan going from her not-so-relaxing vacation, and she didn't want to lose it, especially since she didn't know what her mother was digging up for her to get married in. Naruto. They all glanced up at Tsunade's enraged yell from the other side of the compound. They looked at each other. Clone. Ino pulled her sunglasses down. Think he'll keep it up for much longer? He was going to let her catch him a couple times while the real him goes to clean up her office. Tenten chuckled. That's good. 'Cause if he kept it up for much longer, you'd have to postpone the wedding until he gets out of traction. I think she's out for blood this time. Sakura laughed at the mental image. That would be fine, he's worth the wait. Especially since I know what's under the casts. Ino, who had just taken a sip of sweet tea, did an ode to the gods of the spit take. Damn Sakura, give a girl some warning before you say something like that. Some of us are still trying to get used to this whole you and Naruto thing. What's to get used to? We've been dating for over a year, and we're really good friends for years before that. Is it that hard to believe we're getting married? Ino, Tenten, and Hinata looked at each other, then looked at her. Yes, there was the yelling, said Ino. The smacking, added Tenten. The punching into walls, chimed Hinata. Sakura could feel herself blushing. That was when we were 12. That was also before I knew that all of that idiotic behavior of his was just an act. You know as well as I do that the Naruto we know now is completely different. She heard another yell, this time from the direction of the tower. Well, almost completely different. Well anyways, the boys had their fun last night, if you could call it that. You do realize that we're going to have to one-up them, right? Said Ino seriously. And how do you suggest we do that? I hope this won't involve pissing off the Hokage too. Hinata shuddered. No, nothing like that. That's Naruto's idea of a good time. He likes pain. Ino leered at Sakura, making her blush again. No, we have to send Sakura off to married life with a different kind of bang. She sat in thought several minutes, before what could be called a truly evil grin spread across her face. I was passin' through this village once and saw a club that I wanted to check out. It's only about a day away. We could travel there and spend the night in an inn. Come on guys, it'll be fun, it'll be fun. Sakura narrowed her eyes. Ino, I know that look, and just going to a club in another village wouldn't put it on your face. We have perfectly good clubs here. What are you planning? She ignored the question. What about you two? She asked Hinata and Tenten, you in? The two teammates looked at each other. Hinata shrugged. Sure, why not? What could happen? Sakura groaned slightly. Famous last words. Ino. Sakura hissed. You didn't tell us the club was in another friggin' country. Oh come on, it's just Rice Country. Nothing ever happens here now that Odo isn't around anymore. Yes, but you know who is controlling Rice Country right now, don't you? Hinata was peering through the leaves of the branch she was on. We're not exactly on the best of terms with Taki at the moment, either. That's what's fun about it. Tenten looked over at the blonde from her tree. Thought you said pain was Naruto's thing. You know what's going to happen if any Taki shinobi happen to find out where we're from. Especially Sakura. Considering she's in a couple of bingo books. Now I like a fight as much as the next girl, but this is an incident waiting to happen. While Kona has ongoing issues with Iowa were, to quote Shikamaru, beyond troublesome, Waterfall had also been nibbling at Fire Country's borders more than was sane for such a small country. Then they had started this current quiet occupation of Rice Field Country. There was no looting, rape, or rioting in the streets, and Rice Country's daimyo seemed content to let things go for a while to see what happens. It wasn't known whether Taki W. as just being its usual overconfident self, or something else was stirring them up. Right now it was just a staring contest over the border, but that could always change. So their current position, several miles into Rice Country, looking down on a medium to large village, was sort of insane. Ino, this is what we traveled all day for. We might have stayed home and pranked the Hokage, 'cause when she hears about this, she's going to kill us anyway. Not to mention Naruto, Sakura thought to herself. I know I've said this before, but you're crazy. Huh. And you're marring the emperor of crazy. Consider this training. Sakura heard Tenten sigh. Unfortunately, if the guys find out we came all this way only to chicken out, we'll never hear the end of it. Hinata. Sakura noticed that. Hinata had that obstinate look she'd been getting a lot lately. Kiba was definitely rubbing off on the once shy woman. Let's do it. Yes. Sorry Sakura, you're outvoted. Let's go. Ino yelled and dropped from her branch. The rest followed, with Sakura bringing up a reluctant rear. Looks like she was going to have to be the voice of reason on this little field trip. The four of them gathered on the road and began walking casually toward the town. They had carefully dressed in civilian clothes, and not even their usual civilian clothes, but plainer outfits. They each carried a small pack, so fully they looked like nothing more than a group of friends from a farming village just coming into town for a good time. Suddenly Ino stopped. Oh crap, I almost forgot. Here Hinata, put these on. And she held out a pair of sunglasses. Huh, why do I? No way, Ino. It's almost dark. I'm going to look pretty stupid wearing these. Yeah, but the only thing we can't hide or change are those big white balls in the middle of your face. Sakura and I can dress different, Tenten can let down her hair, but you can't dance with your eyes closed. And you can't use a henge in case we run into another Junin. Any shinobi, no matter what country they're from, is going to know a Hyuga when they see them. Hinata muttered a phrase that Sakura knew for a fact she got from Kiba. Alright, fine, give 'em. She put on the large shades, and the rest of them instantly started trying to hide their giggles. Oh my god, Ino. Did you steal those from your grandmother or something? Sakura snorted. They were the only ones I could find that would completely cover her eyes, Ino replied innocently. I am so going to get you for this Yamanaka, Hinata growled. Sakura's worries seemed to be for nothing, as they were barely given a second glance as they checked into a small inn near Ino's mythical nightclub. They did, however, get more than a few glances as they emerged again a couple hours later. Not to mention the wolf whistle from the young man running the desk of their inn. Sakura was in a low-cut red dress she had picked up in Crescent Moon. It went to her knees, but was split up both sides to show the skin-tight black leather leggings underneath. Calf-high black boots completed the image. Ino had gone for more of a shock factor, as her dress was practically non-existent. Sakura had thought her dress was low-cut. But Ino's barely contained her assets. It was a purple so dark it was almost black, and came with a sort of fingerless glove that went to her elbows. She also wore a pair of stiletto heels that Sakura was sure she would break her neck if she tried to walk in them. Tenten's outfit was on par with what the weapons mistress usually wore. It was a silk Chinese-style wraparound tunic dress, in a rich chocolate brown with two silver-embroidered dragons coming over the shoulders. The dragons' tails entwined in a complex knot on the back. Small sliver buttons fastened it in the front. It came to about mid-thigh on her, showing off her long, slim legs. Her dark brown hair had been left loose to cascade down her back. Hinata was dressed the simplest of all of them, in a slim black dress with no ornamentation. With her generous figure, however, it really wasn't needed. Between the four of them, they had cobbled together some accessories that actually made the clune. KY's sunglasses look more trendy than ridiculous, though it didn't stop her from complaining about them. Her long hair was braided into a single thick plait down her back, with a tendril hanging on either side of her face. The four of them walked the couple blocks to the club. Sakura could see why this place had caught Ino's attention. It was loud, flashy, and colorful, and that was just the outside. After they had paid their cover and entered, they waded through the throng of people on the dance floor and made their way to the bar. It was very busy, so they ordered a few drinks each to tide them over for a while. They made their way to a table and sat down. Ino held up her glass to Sakura, who, after all she has been through, is about to take on the toughest trial of her life. Naruto. Kanpai. They all laughed and clinked their glasses. Kanpai. Sakura started to relax. Here with her friends, maybe this trip had been a good idea. After talking together for a bit, they drifted apart to find activities that suited them. Sakura and Ino headed for the dance floor, dark and crisscrossed with thin multicolored lights, to gyrate with the music. After dancing for the better part of an hour, they took a break and returned to their table. Looking around, Sakura saw Hinata sitting with a small group of people who were so boisterous and good-natured, that they sucked other people into their good time. She didn't see Tenten anywhere, but could sense her somewhere nearby. After another drink she and Ino returned to the dance floor. This set the pattern for the next few hours. It wasn't until later, When Sakura and Ino were just heading back from the restroom that things got interesting. They had just stepped out of the hallway, when she noticed a man standing by the bar. There were some shinobi who were excellent at suppressing their chakra, and this guy was one of them, but no one could hide from a medic of her caliber. His very being screamed, "Junin," to Sakura's finely tuned senses. He had a small book in his hand. And he kept glancing at it and looking around. She was willing to bet it was a bingo book. Ino was oblivious to all this and didn't notice when her companion froze in her tracks. Sakura grabbed for her as she went sailing past, and snagged the front of her dress, dragging her behind her as she ducked behind a sort of decorative room divider. "Sakura," Ino yelped. "I almost had a serious wardrobe malfunction." "What the foo?" "Shish," Sakura hissed. "Shut up and look over there by the bar." Ino craned her neck so she could get an eye over the wall. "Yeah, what about him? How much have you had to drink?" "He's a Junin." "A Junin? Are you sure?" Sakura raised an eyebrow. Ino sighed. "Okay, you're sure. So now what?" "You know, he might not be looking for us." Sakura peeked. He had a bingo book open and now he's showing it to the bartender. "Even if he's not looking for us exactly, he still might recognize us. I think it might be time to get out of here. At least head back to the inn." Ino pouted a little, but agreed. "Where are Tenten and Hinata?" Sakura risked a quick look around. "Hinata is dancing with that group she met. I haven't seen Tenten for a while." Some patrons chose that moment to stage a mass trip to the restrooms, and looked strangely at the two women crouched on the floor. Even though there was really nothing funny about the situation, Sakura and Ino started giggling madly. It took them a few minutes to regain control, as every time they looked at each other, it set them off again. Ino wiped some tears from her eyes. "All right, I'll go get Shade Girl while you look for Tenten. Once you find her, head to the front door and we'll meet you there. Stay down as much as you can. You're the recognizable one, unless Hinata starts dancing too hard and loses those glasses." That started them giggling again as they split up. Sakura started to work her way around the edge of the room, sticking to deep shadows when she LD and suppressing her chakra as far as it could go. After a few minutes of scanning, she finally spotted Tenten sitting at a small table. The young man sitting across from her had his back to Sakura. But his long brown hair gave her a start. For a moment she almost thought Neji had somehow followed them. As she got closer, however, she could see that it wasn't Neji, but the resemblance was close enough for him to have gotten Tenten's attention. That's predictable, Sakura thought as she circled around to where Tenten could see her. She got the sharp-eyed girl's attention and started to signal her in simple hand signs. "Trouble. Meet up. Leaving area." Tenten gave her a slow nod and wrapped up her conversation. Soon she had joined Sakura in the deep shadow of a plant. "What's up?" "There's a Junin with a bingo book looking around and asking questions. I don't know if he's looking for us exactly, but I don't want to take any chances. We're heading back to the inn." Tenten quickly agreed. And as the two made their way toward the exit, Sakura noticed a kunai suddenly appear in her hand. She stopped. "Tenten, do I want to know where you've been keeping that thing in that outfit?" Tenten grinned. "Probably not." Sakura could accept that. Ino and Hinata were waiting in a concealed spot near the door, and evidently they were finding something pretty funny. They could barely contain themselves. Sakura and Tenten looked at them curiously. "What?" Ino took a deep breath, glanced at Sakura, and started cracking up again. "You know, we could stay. I don't think we have anything to worry about with that Junin." She was making even less sense than usual. "Why not? As Hinata and I were heading up here, he stopped us. We were suppressing our chakra, so he didn't even look at us closely, but he asked us some questions. It is a tacky bingo book he is showing around, and yes, he is looking for you, Sakura. Someone told him that they thought they saw you come in here. And why exactly is that funny?" Ino started laughing again, and Hinata took up the story. "I guess Taki couldn't find a very good picture of you for their book, so they got someone to paint one of you. It was hideous." Ino gasped out. "Made you look kind of like that weird Karen girl that Sasuke knows. Or the love child of her and Akamichi. The woman in the picture must have weighed 300 pounds. And had red hair. Not pink, red. You could probably walk up to that guy and introduce yourself, and he wouldn't recognize you." Sakura was torn between amusement and annoyance. Amusement that someone could get something so wrong. And annoyance that some people might actually think she looked like that. But something else was coming to mind, the little joker side that she had always had, and that Naruto was bringing out more. What do you say we mess with this guy a bit? Ino stopped giggling. Mess with him? How? I thought you were the one that didn't want any incidents. I don't. But trust me, he won't even know what hit him. If he's looking for Haruno Sakura, I say we give her to him. This sucks, Hachiro thought to himself. First, this was supposed to be his night off. He could have been at this very club right now, but enjoying himself rather than looking for a supposed Konoha nin. Second, his superior had been going on a very vague description from a genin, who had participated in the last Chunin exam in Konoha. And failed. Incidentally. According to him, he had seen Haruno Sakura, a Junin kunoichi and the Hokage's apprentice, walk into this club. Personally, Hachiro thought that the very idea was ludicrous. First of all, why in hell would a Konoha nin come all this way to go to a club? Second, he should have been able to sense another Junin in here, and so far was coming up blank. He had the best chakra control of his age group, so he shouldn't have tipped off another shinobi of his presence. Unfortunately, he had only been a Junin for a few weeks, and that meant he still got some grunt work. He looked at the picture in his bingo book. This chick should really stand out. She looked kind of hard to miss. None of the bartenders had seen anyone who looked remotely like the picture. This was a waste of his time. He scanned the crowd again, sensing a sudden surge in chakra, and she was there. Where had she come from? There was no missing her. Red hair, and huge. He street-arted to make his way across the dance floor, weaving his way gracefully between the wildly dancing people. He lost her for a moment when she sat down at a corner table. Gotcha. Hachiro made it thrug. The crowd and rushed up to confront the beautiful platinum blonde woman in a dark purple dress who was the only one sitting at the table. He blinked a few times. She cocked her head teasingly and looked up at him with a coquettish look in her blue eyes. Did you need help with something? No. Sorry to bother you. He spun around at another surge of chakra and saw the large red-haired woman again. This time heading for the restroom. He didn't know how she got past him, but he had her now. That was a dead end. He waded back across the dance floor, this time a little less gracefully, and crept down the hallway to the women's restroom. After a few moments the door started to open, and Hachiro braced himself. The door opened all the way. He crouched and jumped in front of a young woman in a brown Chinese-style dress, who yelped and automatically whopped him across the head. What the hell is wrong with you? Are you some kind of pervert or something? Hachiro felt himself blushing. ND stammered an apology as the woman stomped past him. He looked around cautiously and poked his head in the restroom. There was no one else in there. For good measure, he looked in the men's room. You never knew. But it was empty as well. Hachiro, you are losing your mind, he muttered to himself. He felt more chakra and reluctantly looked over. There she was dancing right in the middle of the crowd. This was getting ridiculous. For some reason she was wearing these thick sunglasses, thought the dance floor was pretty dark. Hachiro started shoving his way toward his target, and just as he got near, her sunglasses fell off and she ducked beneath the crowd to retrieve them. He dove over the last few people in his way, and landed on a young woman in a slim black dress. She was wearing sunglasses. As he sat straddling her, she looked up at him and screamed loudly. Hachiro jumped up as the crowd around him started growling and muttering. Sorry. Tripped. Here, let me help you up. He pulled the woman to her feet and beat a hasty retreat. He was leaning up against a pillar, catching his breath a few minutes later. What the hell was going on? He considered himself a pretty steady shinobi. He had completed his Chunin exam in Kiri for Kami's sake. That took guts. But right now he was so turned around it was freaking him out. So when he felt that telltale surge of chakra again, he groaned. He would have almost rather retake his Chunin exam than go investigate again. But somehow he gathered up what was left of his pride and looked around. There, going out the front door. Akiro followed the woman until she crossed the street in front of the club. He had her in his sights and out of that god-forsaken club. Haruno Sakura, he yelled. He rushed into the street just as a large cart passed in front of him, blocking his view momentarily. No, Haruno Sakura. The cart passed, leaving him looking at a young athletic-looking young woman with cherry blossom-hued hair in a red dress. She looked at him curiously. Yes, Hachiro wasn't going to be distracted. He scanned the area with all his senses. No sign of his target. Haruno Sakura, where did you go? I'm standing right here. Now who are you and what do you want? He looked at the pink-haired woman. Haruno Sakura. That's my name, don't wear it out. Hachiro pulled out his bingo book and turned to the right page. There was the picture. There was the name. He was getting a migraine. The young woman who looked nothing like the picture in the book and who was not radiating an ounce of chakra was still standing in front of him impatiently. I'm sorry, I thought you were someone else. The girl cocked an eyebrow. Are you feeling all right? You're awful pale. He grimaced. Just having a bad night. Sakura watched the young Junin walk slowly away, muttering to himself about stiff drinks and psychiatric help. She turned and crossed the street back to the club, where her friends were in the entryway on the ground laughing. Sakura grinned as they went back inside. I think we broke that poor guy. You know, if Taki ever starts something with us, we could claim the first victory. Konoha Kunoichi, 1 Taki Shinobi, 0. As it should be. That's it for today, I will stop here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you please consider subscribe and make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends and don't forget to check out my Patreon. Details in description.